What is cardiac axis? How it is measured? What are normal limits? This is topic of this video. The cardiac axis refers to the average direction of ventricular depolarization in the vertical plane. Leads 1 and AVF are usually used to determine the axis of the heart. QRS complexes may be positive, negative, and equiphasic. Positive QRS complex means that amplitude of the R wave is greater than sum of amplitude of the Q wave and S wave. Negative QRS complex means that sum of amplitude of the Q wave and S wave is greater than R wave. Equiphasic QRS complex have equal amplitude of the R wave and sum of Q wave and S wave. Let's see 4 of the possible combinations between average direction of ventricular depolarization and relation to leads 1 and AVF. The cardiac axis is measured in degrees. Lead 1 is directed right to 0 degrees. Lead AVF is directed right to 90 degrees. Normal axis is between 0 and 90 degrees. Left axis deviation denotes cardiac axis from 0 degrees and minus 90 degrees. However, if the QRS axis ranges from 0 degrees to minus 30 degrees, this is often called a physiological left axis deviation and is considered a normal variant. Cardiac axis between 90 and 180 degrees is called right axis deviation. And finally, cardiac axis from minus 90 degrees to 180 degrees is called extreme axis deviation or northwest axis. So, if QRS complex is positive in both leads 1 and AVF, there is normal cardiac axis. If QRS complex is positive in lead 1 and negative in lead AVF, there is left axis deviation. In right axis deviation, QRS complex is negative in lead 1 and positive in AVF. If QRS complex is negative in both leads 1 and AVF, there is extreme axis deviation. To differentiate physiological left axis deviation, the QRS complex in lead 2 should be analyzed. If the QRS complex in lead 2 is predominantly positive, the QRS axis ranges from 0 degrees to minus 30 degrees. If the QRS complex in lead 2 is negative, the QRS axis is less than minus 30 degrees. Sometimes the cardiac axis can be determined accurately enough by analyzing leads with equiphasic QRS complexes. The cardiac axis is perpendicular, in other words at 90 degrees, to the lead with an equiphasic QRS complex. There are 2 degrees perpendicular to the equiphasic QRS complex. However, analysis of QRS complex in other leads helps to choose the correct QRS axis. In this ECG fragment, it's easy to see that the QRS complex in lead AVL is equiphasic. The angle of lead AVL is minus 30 degrees. It's easy to see that there are 2 possible degrees, minus 120 degrees and plus 60 degrees, after drawing the perpendicular line to this lead. Positive QRS complexes in leads 1 and AVF indicate that the cardiac axis is from 0 degrees to plus 90 degrees, quadrant method. Thus, the cardiac axis is plus 60 degrees. The most precise method of cardiac axis measurement is precise calculation with measuring of angle of vector relatively to lead 1. It's usually calculated by ECG machine of software and often is indicated on the ECG. And now, finally, try to recognize cardiac axis of these 4 ECG fragments. You can pause this video for a while. So, you are right. This is normal cardiac axis. This is left axis deviation. There is right axis deviation. And here is extreme axis deviation.
Thank you for watching this video. We hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see more of our videos, please subscribe and hit the like button.